HOA office door splintered inward at 6:43 a.m. Margaret Thornwood shrieked as agents and windbreakers flooded their home, toppling decorative baskets of artificial roses and tearing down a wall-mounted sign that read, "No solicitors," in bold lettering. Check lawed for her landline phone, but it was too late. "Ma'am, your buying served a federal warrant for mail obstruction, wire fraud, and impersonating a USPS liaison." Agent Morrison barked in a commanding tone. Margaret gasped with disbelief. "But, this is Sunset Ridge Estates. We are a platinum tier community," he replied with a stern voice. "No more. I'm Cameron Foster, and this issue I brought down the most notorious HOA president in our state's history. It all started when I moved back home to Sunset Ridge Estates to take care of my ailing father. Robert E. was a retired carpenter, loved watching old westerns, and depended on twice-monthly medication to levies for his heart condition. He mostly kept to myself, mowing the lawn on weekends, fixing up the old fence posts, and grilling burgers like a man with nothing to prove. Life was simple and quiet, exactly how Dad and I liked it. Then came Margaret Thornwood, Hope resident and self-proclaimed board accountability specialist. She saw me as a disruption to her perfectly manicured kingdom. Too independent, she'd say, too casual for her taste. When Dad's wheelchair ramp was installed by a licensed contractor, she called it a visual downgrade to the neighborhood aesthetic. The ramp was painted to match the house, built to code, and necessary for Dad's mobility. But Margaret didn't care about any of that. She only cared about her precious property values and maintaining what shackled the Sunset Ridge standard. Thinks when a UPS driver began making regular stops at our house, Margaret declared this excessive delivery traffic and started documenting every single peg that arrived. She'd stand at her window with binoculars, notebook in hand, recording delivery times and package sizes like some kind of suburban spy. First, she cited me for an unsanctioned ramp structure, claiming it needed HOA approval for any modifications to the property exterior. The fine was $150. Then came the citation for excessive drive, used because apparently 2 delivery trucks in 1 week constitute an activity, another $200 fine. But the final straw came on a Tuesday morning when Dad's heart medication failed to arrive for 4 days straight. This wasn't just any medication. It washes beta blockers, the ones that kept his heart rhythm stable. Missing a dose could send him to the hospital. I called the pharmacy immediately. I confirmed they'd sent it via certified mail 3 days ago. I checked with the post office, and they had a delivery confirmation showing it was delivered to our community. But according to the HOA security logs that Margaret so proudly maintained, the package was intercepted for compliance review. Margaret had implemented a new policy without proper notification. All packages now had to be cleared at the HOA sorting center, which was really just a plastic storage bin outside the community clubhouse. Not climate control, no security, just a bin sitting in the Florida heat. I rushed to the clubhouse and found Dad's package turned open. The contents clearly tampered with, a bright red sticker with slapidacrous it reading, "Return to sender. Resident unverified." The medication inside had been exposed to 90 heat 4 days, rendering it potentially unsafe. That night, Dad's heart rate spiked to 160 beats per minute. I called 911, and paramedics rushed him to the emergency room. He spent 3 days in the cardiac. While doctors stabilized his condition, the bill came to $32,000, and the doctor said we were lucky I got him Thor when I did. I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board detailing how Margaret's illegal mail interceptionery killed my father. Her response was to send me a $75 fine for using aggressive fonts in correspondence. Apparently, Times New Roman size 12 was too confrontational for her delicate sensibility. What Margaret didn't know is that I had connections from a previous life. In the tech industry, specifically, my former college roommate Marcus Williams, who now worked in cyber forensics at the U.S. Postal Inspections. When I told him what happened, his voice turned serious. "Cameron, interfering with mail delivery is a federal crime. If she's doing this to you, she's probably doing it to others." Marcus started an investigation that same week. Within days, they discovered Margaret had been redirecting dozens of packages using fraudulent leasehold forms. She'd created a fake title for herself as Patricia M. Thornwood, USPS Community Liaison, complete with a forged badge she'd ordered from an online novelty shop. The investigation revealed she'd been appending packages, determining their contents and either approving them for delivery or marking them for return based on her personal preferences. Medications, especially those for elderly residents, were free or returned because she believed too many prescriptions indicated poorly styled choices. That fake USPS title triggered multiple federal alerts. Impersonating postal personnel is a felony, interfering with mail delivery a felony. When you combine that with tampering with medical deliveries, you're looking at serious federal. Marcus told me they had enough evidence to move forward with criminal. I made one quiet phone, Calto, the FBI field office, providing them with all the documentation I'd gathered. The raid was scheduled for the following Monday morning when Margaret would be in her office, preparing her weekly compliance reports. The raid revealed a shocking amount of evidence. Investigators found boxes of tamperette packs in her office, some dating back to years. There were HOA fine ledgers with forged signatures indicating she'd been issuing fines without proper board. Most disturbing was a file labeled Non-Compliant Seniors Phase 2, which outlined plans to make life so difficult for elderly residents that they'd be forced to move. One document showed she'd been systematically residents over 70 with fines and package delays, hoping to drive them out so younger, more aesthetically pleasing familia schooled move in. She'd written notes like Ms. Peterson's oxygen delivery delayed considering property acquisition property, and Mrs. Kim's diabetes apples marked suspicious monitor for vacancy. The HOA board members who had been under Margaret's iron-fisted control for years resigned en masse within hours of the raid. They claimed they had no knowledge of her illegal activities, though documents showed they'd rubber-stamped every one of her policies with question. The neighborhood response was immediate and overwhelming. Residents poured out of their homes to thank me, sharing their own stories of Margaret's tyranny. One elderly man named George burned his stack of HOA violation notices in his backyard grill, which happened to be shaped like an American flag. The irony wasn't lost on a woman named Sarah told me Margaret had delayed her son's Asmonheller delivery because she deemed it excessive to need monthly refills. Another resident, Jim, said his wife's cancer medications had been returned to sender 3 times because Marguerite decided the packages looked suspicious. Margaret was hauled out in handcuffs. At 7:30 a.m., right as the morning dog walkers were making their rounds, Channel 6 local news had somehow gotten wind of the raid and had a camera crew positioned perfectly to capture her being led to the federal vehicle. She was still in her pink bathrobe and bunny slippers screaming about property values and compliance standards. The federal prosecutor laid out the charges in detail: mail fraud, wire fraud, impersonation of a federal employee, and conspiracy to interfere with post. Each charge carried potential prison time, and the evidence was overwhelming. They had her fake badge orders from Etsy, the fraudulent 2SPs form she'd filed, and testimonies from dozens of affected residents. In court, Margaret tried to claim she was preserving male purity and protecting the neighborhood from the judge, a non-incensed woman named Patricia Hawkins, read aloud Margaret's Etsy order for a USPS liaison badge, complete with her special request for extra official-looking stars. The judge then read excerpts from Margaret's HOA memo titled Package Protocol identifying suspicious prescription boxes. In it, Margaret had written that any package from a pharmacy was inherently suspicious and require thorough inspection to prevent drug trafficking in our pristine community. The prosecutor presented evidence that Margaret had caused over $300,000 in medical expenses due to delayed medications, not counting the emotional distress and potential loss of life. 17 residents had been hospitalized due to medication delays, and 3 had near. When it came time for sentencing, the courtroom was packed with Sunset Ridge residents. The judge looked directly at Margaret and spoke with measured authority. Ms. Thornwood, Yawa best, your position of trust endangered lives and violated federal. In pursuit of your twisted vision, Ofe perfect neighborhood. Your actions were not just illegal, they were moral. Margaret was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison, 500 hours off community service. Specifically, at post offices, ordered to pay $450,000 in restitution to affected residents, and received a lifetime ban from serving a NONI HOA board in the United States. Asked judge read the sentence. Margaret's face went from pink to white to gray, and she collapsed into her chair with a wail that echoed through the courtroom.